Buonasera a tutti.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for being with us. My name's Elvira Parravicini, and I am a neonatologist working in New York. Today, I have the great honor of introducing to you a dear friend of mine, who's also a great American professor, Dr. Brad Stuart. Let me spend a couple of preliminary words about Brad Stuart. He's been working as a doctor for over 40 years. After working in the intensive care unit for many years, he decided to set up a profit management network for advanced care for the elderly and people affected by terminal diseases, so as to take care of these people in their homes. He set up teams with social workers, nurses, and other personnel to take care of these people in their homes. The network comprises a lot of hospitals in the United States, about 100 hospitals in the States. And Brad Stuart has lately been working as Chief Medical Officer of the Coalition to Transform Advanced Care in Washington. He's working on new care methods which are revolutionizing the care of patients, and he hopes that he will soon be able to extend his model to the entire American territory. This innovation is very significant for me because it started from his love for the individual, and it is currently changing the American medical structure. Brad defines himself as an atheist, in spite of the scandal of the flesh, so to say. That is to say, the fact that we see our body in a way degenerating when one works in medicine. He recognizes that the human body is actually the repository of our meeting with the mystery. So ours is going to be a conversation. I'm going to ask questions to Brad Stuart, and let's see what happens. So let's start. Okay, I think I need my first slide. Okay. I'm going to start with a preliminary remark. Each of us acts in life for his own needs. In the medical profession, this is even more true. I've been working as a doctor for over 30 years, and I know that the medical profession consists in a human relationship made up of two needs: the need for health of the ill, and the need on the part of the medical professional to meet the need of his or her patient. At the heart of this relationship between patient and doctor, I like to define this relationship with the word healing. This term in the English language is very difficult to translate into Italian. It means having other people heal, curing other people. But at the same time, it implies taking care of the other person, also tenderly, which is very difficult to convey in the Italian language. And furthermore, I think that there's a healing for the patient and a healing also for the medical professional. And these two experiences, these two different types of healing take place at the same time. I'd like to show you this miniature dating back to the Middle Ages, which I like very much. I don't know if you can if you can distinguish actually the faces of the patients and the medical professionals. They're both very tense. They're both in tension. The tension is actually being healed and heal someone else. I became a doctor for this reason. I started working as a neonatologist because of this, exactly because of this, because I wanted to collaborate to, in a way, the happiness of less fortunate children born with severe diseases. And at this stage in my life, after 30 years of work, after 30 years of my profession, I sometimes wonder, have I really helped the others? Has this healing really occurred for me and for my patients? There have been many cases, like the case of this little girl. She weighed 400 grams, slightly more than 400 grams, and the healing here occurred totally. She stayed in hospital for 6 months, and she managed in healing, so her healing succeeded. After that, she went home, she grew up. In this picture, you see her, she's 3 years old, she plays with her friends. So from this point of view, I can say that the child is alive thanks to the treatment we gave her, and I helped this child heal. And now I'd like to stop for a while and ask Brad my first question. I would like to know on his part what he thinks about healing. What does healing mean for you?
Grazie.
Thank you.
Before I begin to answer the question, I want to just express to you, my friend and colleague, and to everyone here, what a privilege it is to be here talking, especially at this meeting. This meeting has great meaning for me personally, not just as a doctor, but as a person who feels very deeply that healing has as much to do with the spirit and the soul of the person sitting in front of us, or of all of us in this room, as it does have to do with the body. The child that you talked about was healed and was also cured. Those are two different states or two different processes. Curing is what we doctors are trained to do. Curing means that we use our brain to assess the patient, evaluate them carefully, use all our knowledge, everything we've packed into our memory and our training, diagnose correctly, decide on treatment, administer the treatment, and if we're lucky and if we're skillful, the patient recovers. That's curing. And I'll talk about healing in a second. My last comment about curing, after doing it for many years, is, and I mean no disrespect to any doctors who may be here, but curing is something that a very intelligent monkey could do. It doesn't take spiritual insight. It doesn't take awareness of the soul. It doesn't require knowing your emotions, light and dark. None of that is necessary for curing. So in our hotel here, where we are lucky enough to stay, we found a quote last night on the pillow of our bed from the great Federico Fellini. Fellini says, "Undoubtedly we are descended from the monkeys. Unfortunately, we cannot return." And I think that's very important. We must go forward beyond knowledge of the physical and application of techniques, specific techniques that we're trained to do. Those are very important to know and very important to apply, but that's not the whole story. So, back to your question, Elvira. Healing is a process that's internal, that occurs very deep inside every single person, whether they be a patient, a doctor, an attendee at this conference, healing is coming into the presence of a greater awareness of the divinity, the sacredness, the holiness of our own true self. And we'll talk a little more as we go along about the self, but I want to note that it's the theme of the entire meeting. What is this thing that we call I? What is that? And I will try to distinguish in terms, in the context of healing, what the difference might be between the true I, which I believe is God within us, and the self that we commonly walk around believing all day and all night is actually who we are. And that, I don't believe that that's true. I think there is a deeper I that we can become aware of, but it's only when we work together and come into connection, engagement, and community that we can learn together what that inner I really is, who that is, who we are in ourselves and who we are together. So, to return to the healing question, to learn to be a healer as a doctor is much bigger job, a much deeper and higher profession than simply learning to cure. We were talking with medical students yesterday. You can be a good doctor by learning how to cure. You will never be a great physician, until you learn how to heal. Healing is a process that you can describe as helping or leading, assisting another person to come into the presence of their own soul, of their own deepest true I. Much deeper than the self that we believe out on the street every day, or even in the hospital, or even as a doctor that we believe we are. Much deeper than that. When we enter into that deep transaction together, and often it doesn't involve words. Words are very tricky. It's more about the presence of the person. Then we can participate together in healing. And, you know, to hit a stopping point or a pause point here, we are all here. You would not have come to this conference if you were not interested in being healed, in participating in the healing process yourself. Healing is what we're all here for. We're here to find out who that I actually is. So, I have to apologize because all I have is words here. And words are very tricky. You have to, just as the self is very tricky, I want to give you an example of how tricky words can be. So I will make a statement, and I want you to be very careful about how you listen to what I say, okay? And the statement is, Elvira and I are lovers. Now, what I mean by that is not that it's not normal everyday amore. I mean, she is very cute. You have to admit. The real meaning, what I actually mean, is a deeper meaning of those words, and that is that Elvira and I have had the privilege of working with many, many, many people who are suffering so deeply that they can barely stand their condition. They are suffering at such a deep level that you need to find a way underneath that suffering to find them, to find the true I and assist that I to come back so that the process of healing can happen. That's what healing is about. So when I say Elvira and I are lovers, what I really mean is we both have learned, just through experience, many mistakes, we have learned how to love. Yes, we love each other because we do the same work. And when two colleagues are together, that's a certain kind of love. But I think what I mean is the same love that Jesus spoke about. The love of one human for another that comes from compassion. The passion of knowing that we are all together in the same situation. I will die. The person in front of me may be ready to die very soon, but we are in this process together. We're a team. So the same way Elvira and I are a team here, healing has to be done as a team as well. So that's enough words for now, but that's the beginning. We're scratching the surface of healing.
Grazie, grazie Brad.
Thank you, Brad. I'd like to carry on with the same example I used before. This is the latest picture I have of the little girl you saw before. She speaks 3 languages. She's very good at school. Her mom comes from Latin America, so she speaks Spanish, but she also speaks Portuguese because his father is from Brazil. So by looking at the picture of this little girl, I wondered, how come I'm so happy when I manage to heal a newborn? Well, I think that the reason is that I acknowledge the fact that we are made for the exceptional. We want that what we really desire happens to us. But when it does, we are in wonder. So the experience of the exceptional in medicine is the experience of healing for me and for my patient. So this is the second step. We are made for the exceptional, but this doesn't always happen. I'll make another example. And what really strikes me is that in spite of this, of the fact that our wishes are not satisfied, these wishes are still there. There was the little girl, her name was Rossella, and she was born with a very serious disease of the brain. She couldn't breathe. She had seizures, and in spite of all the pharmaceutical we gave her, we couldn't solve the problem of her seizures. So, well, we talked with her family, particularly with her mother, and we tried to understand what we could do to at least make the little girl's life a little better. So when we asked, what do you want for your little child, the mother answered by smiling and as if she wanted to say, I want for her to heal completely and have a wonderful life. So what I understood then was that this mother didn't want a compromise. She wanted it all for her child. And I really felt the same. Me too. I wanted the same. I wanted all for that little child. So this is my second question to Brad. What does it mean to try and give an answer to this desire? Our patients want to heal completely, and that's what we want for them as well. How do you approach these in your work?
Oh, These questions are so easy, so simple. But I have to say that when I began in medicine, I began as a regular general internal medicine doctor, seeing all kinds of patients, doing my best to capture or to catch their illness, because illness is a process, it changes through time, to catch that process and stop the process of illness or reverse it. That's a real cure. More and more today, we see illnesses that cannot be cured. Diabetes, heart failure, cancer. We now treat chronic illness that progresses and cannot ever be cured. So we can slow it down or arrest the progression of that illness, but we cannot truly cure it. It's rare nowadays, not rare, but unusual to find illnesses that can be completely cured. Much more often in the older people that I work with, we have chronic illnesses that we need to treat but not cure. So what do you tell someone, or well, first, what do you feel in yourself as a doctor when you realize this person sitting in front of me, my patient, whom I have a very deep connection with, I am not going to be able to help them. I am not going to be able to cure them. In fact, no matter what I do, they will die. And for many of my patients, for 20 years I did hospice and palliative care, working only with people who were very close to dying. Before you know what you can say to someone else, you need to look inside yourself and know how you feel. I know this is important and I know this is difficult because, again, yesterday, I don't know if she's here, but we talked with a number of medical students, and one, actually 5 or 6 came up afterwards, and one had the courage to ask me a question. And that question was, how do I cope with the situation where I'm with a patient who is going to die and I can't make them better? How do I cope with the fact that I feel useless? And as she said that, she began to cry. Tears ran down her face. And of course, she was very ashamed when that happened, because, you know, when you're a medical student and a professor visits, it's not good form to break down in tears in front of the great professor. So what I had to say to her was, first, when you are working with people who are very ill, always, without any exception, there are very deep feelings involved. Before people will even admit to themselves that they're dying, if they ever do, sometimes they never admit it till their last breath, but before they do, there is intense fear, terror. And that's only one of many feelings. So, when I'm talking with someone who's that ill and their family, and tears happen, I think it's good. Tears mean that the feelings have broken through to the surface, and we're beginning to get a view. We're beginning to experience. We're beginning to touch into the true I. Because When you're a medical student in training for medicine, your commandment number one is be strong. That's how you as a self deals with medical training. You must be strong. Very important in America. Never be weak. Always be strong. That's why tears are so important, because no human being can be that strong. And not only that, human beings who insist on being that strong are lousy, terrible healers. They can't, it's very hard to participate in healing when you have your armor on. You have to take your armor off. So I told this and I can tell you honestly, and my wife is sitting here, she can tell you more than I can, that's a very hard lesson for me. Always has been a very hard lesson for me to learn. It's so easy to be big, strong, American man. Well, what I said to the student was, I cannot, I cannot see into your future, but I can assure you that you have the potential to be not just a good doctor, but a great physician. Why? Because you care. You care so much about healing, although we weren't talking about that. You care so much, and you feel so terrible about feeling useless, that there's no way you will ever fail. You will at least be a very, very good doctor, and you have the potential to be truly great as a physician, because you feel and you're honest about the fact that you are powerless. You are powerless. You cannot do anything on your own. And if you feel, anyone who feels as a doctor that it's all up to you, you take it all on your own shoulders, carry the burden, you are the mighty and strong doctor who cures, you will burn out, you will do harm, you will overtreat, you will waste, you will cause suffering. I've done it myself, and I've seen it so often. It's not until we realize that at the base of who we are as healers, step one is to realize that we are powerless. It is not up to us. And I think that's, in other words, the outcome is not up to us. There's a lot about the process of healing that absolutely is up to us. In fact, it's our responsibility as healers to make sure the process of healing has the best chance of flowering, of blooming. But it's like a plant. It blooms when you plant the seed, water it, nourish it, stand back, and protect it. And then it has the best chance of growing and blooming. You can't grab it and pull it and make it grow. Many doctors try that, and it's just a mistake. It's a mistake. It's often a very painful mistake. But it's not until you realize that as like a farmer or someone who grows flowers, you must provide the vessel, plant the seed, provide the water and the soil. The soil is already there, and help healing to grow. It's not a passive exercise. It's not sitting back and waiting and doing nothing. That would be abandoning the person that needs you, the real you, to show up and be present. They need you very badly. So that's what I didn't have time to say to her, is that I know as a student you feel useless. I know you have no idea how to provide the kind of presence that heals. You just don't know yet, but you will. And the way you will know it is you will go into situation after situation, case after case, patient after patient. You will meet them where they are. You will discover who they are. You may help them discover who they are. And through that process, healing will occur for many of them, not all of them, because willingness, the decision to heal, has to be there. Not everyone wants to be healed. But as Jesus said, those that have ears, let them hear. Meaning, when you meet, as a doctor, you meet a patient who really desires healing, even as they may have cancer and their body may be disintegrating day by day. It doesn't matter. That person may really desire healing. Those were the kinds of people that came to Jesus and just touched his cloak. Why? Because they wanted healing. So, the real miracles that we see every day, the extraordinary that Elvira talks about, miracles, I don't find miracles to be extraordinary. I find the greatest miracles are often very ordinary and very small. You have to have your eyes open and your ears open, and most importantly, your heart open, even to notice them. But they're just little events. The way for you, a parent's eyes may light up with Elvira when they understand that she is there to be with them, not just to put tubes into a patient, but to actually be there and listen, to hear. Listening is the core of healing. So, to wind up the question, I think when we find ourselves in a situation, whether we're a doctor, a parent, a sister, a brother, a mother, a father, a bartender, a hairdresser, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be a doctor. We can bring the possibility or the potential for healing by bringing ourselves with our hearts open, powerless. We are not there to fix a problem. We are there to meet a person. We are there with our hearts open to allow another person to open their heart and have a true encounter. And that's the way healing can happen. There's more to it than that, but that's step one. And to sum it up, I guess the most important element may be when I'm a doctor and I'm with a person who's really suffering, the first time I know we're making progress is when they say something, I listen. Then I say something back to let them know that I heard what they said. And they say something like, that's what I meant. And their eyes light up because they know that they were heard. It's not something I do to them. It's something that I help bring from them. Listening is important, but letting someone know that they are heard is the goal of step one of healing. reminded me of a story that I told yesterday, so I'll just tell it now. I was a very young doctor, and I was in solo practice, just on my own, in the town where I lived, and this was 35 years ago. I still live in near that town, but it was a Sunday, and I was making rounds in the hospital, meaning I was visiting every patient in the hospital of my own and my 5 practice partners. We had a call group, so I was on call for the whole group, seeing everybody's patients. So I had to go to 5 hospitals and see 30 patients on a Sunday. I had very little children then, and I really wanted to get back home. So I was doing what we call lightning rounds. Lightning rounds means you go as fast as you can, patient by patient, and then you leave and go to the next hospital, and hopefully you get home by dinner time and you can put the kids to bed. So I walked into the room of maybe the 5th patient. I knew she was a patient of my partner. She had cancer, and I knew from reading her chart she was in the hospital to be prepared with intravenous medication and fluids, be prepared for cancer treatment, chemotherapy, the next day, Monday. So I was going as fast as I can. I looked at her, I listened to her with my stethoscope. I did all the official things, and then I looked in her eyes, and she looked so unhappy that I thought to myself, I really shouldn't do this, but I stopped. And I asked her a question, and it's always good to ask a question, not tell, but ask. So I said, how are you doing? And she knew right away what I meant. I didn't mean how was her pain, how was her breathing. I was asking her as a person how she was feeling. And she said, terrible. I feel awful. And I said, why? And she said, I'm here to get cancer chemotherapy tomorrow, and I don't want it. My tumor is growing. My cancer specialist, my oncologist, has told me that the treatment isn't making the tumor smaller, but it's all he can do. But I don't want to do it anymore. I feel like I'm ready to die. And she wasn't sad. She was okay. So I said, as a young doctor, I said, no patient, and this is the United States, no patient needs to get treatment they don't want. You just say no. You just say you don't want it. You have that right. And she looked me right in the eye and said, you don't know what you're talking about. And I said, okay, what do you mean? And she said, my family wants me to get better very badly, and I can't tell them that I don't want this treatment. And I said, so you're doing this for your family even though you don't want it? And she said, yes, that's what it amounts to. So once again, I thought I really should not go any further with this. This is going to take the rest of the day. But I said, maybe we should talk to your family. Are any of them here? And she said, oh, yes, they're out in the hall. So I walked to the door and looked out. The hall was full of people, very busy day in the hospital. So I said, is anybody here from Mrs. Smith's family? And 14 people turned around and looked at me. And I said, okay, come on in. 14 people walked into the room and stood there and sat down on the bed. 4 generations, her parents, her husband, her brothers and sisters, her children, and her grandchildren. That's 5 generations, I guess. So So I said, once again, I looked inside myself and said, this is terrible. This is going to take so long. So I said, Mrs. Smith, would you like to tell everyone why we're here, what we're talking about? And she said, no. So I said, okay, Mrs. Smith has told me, I am not her doctor. My partner is her doctor, but she has told me that she feels she may be getting to the end of her life, and she doesn't want the cancer treatment that she's scheduled to get tomorrow. And as soon as those words were out of my mouth, no one said a word, but in the other side of the room, a man got to his feet and walked toward me. And as he walked, he swayed back and forth. You know, he had a lot of vino. So he walked up, faccia, nose to nose. And his nose was very large and red. He put his nose almost on my nose, and he said, and he did not say it this way. I'm making it much nicer than how he said it. But he basically said, Dr. Stuart, your job is not to tell us that she is dying. Your job is to get her better. And he turned and walked toward the door. And I thought, I've made a mess. This is terrible. I have no idea what to do. So the only thing I could think of to say was, sir, I will listen to anything you have to say, but please don't leave the room. And he was right at the door. He stopped, swayed back and forth, thought about it, turned around, came back in, slumped down onto the bed, and burst into tears. Now, at that point in my career, I didn't realize what tears actually meant. So I thought, this is a disaster. I have opened up the portals of Hades. This is horrible. I've done the worst thing I could have done by starting this. And as I was thinking that, several other people in the room started moving toward me, which was scary, but then they held out their hands. They wanted to shake my hand. They came up and they hugged me. The man was weeping on the bed very loud, and they said, thank you, thank you. And I thought, thank you for what? This is a mess. Why is this good? So I said, what's the story? I don't understand. And they said, well, the patient was married before. She got a divorce. Her husband moved far away. But last week, he came back to town, and that's him. And ever since he's come back, he's convinced that she needs to be better. He felt, this happens very often, I later learned through many other cases. He felt so guilty that all he could think of was, let's make sure she gets better. Then everything will be okay. If she dies, that's terrible. So they said to me, you have broken the logjam. You know, everything has opened up now. And I said, so let's make a plan. What should we do? And they said, well, we all know that she doesn't want the chemotherapy, but we couldn't really say anything, and we couldn't even ask her. Now we can have a talk. So we had a talk, and in 5 minutes we worked out a plan. The next day, the oncologist, cancer specialist, was very relieved because he didn't really want to give her the treatment. My partner was very relieved because he hadn't known what to do. She went home. Her family was with her. And about two or 3 weeks later, she died very peacefully at home with her family all around. And I later heard that for all of them, it was a healing experience. So this story is an example of several very important things. First, don't be afraid to ask questions. Second, listen very carefully to what is said. Just listen. Third, be prepared for a surprise. I thought it would be a terrible surprise. It turned out that it was not terrible at all. It turned out it was wonderful. And as I practiced this more, I found in most situations very interesting and very good things happen when you bring forth honesty, when you ask what people want, when you help them get what they want, not what we want to do to them, what they want. And finally, back to the question, I learned that when there's nothing you can do to cure, you can always give healing a chance to happen. And this was a very fortunate situation where it happened almost by itself. From the time I walked into the room until the time I left, probably 20 minutes. In the middle, I thought it would be 3 hours. It was 20 minutes. I went on, I finished, I went home, I had dinner, and I told the story to my children.
Grazie.
Thank you, Brad, for this wonderful story.
Dagli esempi.
When you hear these stories, it is really clear that healing means taking into account of your heart as a doctor and the heart of your patient. And from this point of view, I'd like to introduce another topic, and then there will be a question. Why? Well, I'm convinced that all of us, as human beings, have the same heart. Nurses and doctors and patients and mothers and fathers share the same heart. So the heart is the biggest resource we have to live, to face life, and particularly to face the most difficult moments in life. So I would like to tell you a very short story. Everything I learn from my patients. So that's why I always tell these stories. This year I met a girl. She was an immigrant from Latin America. She was pregnant, and the doctors told her that her baby would be born with very serious brain impairments. But so she had decided she had opted for an abortion, but she couldn't do that in Latin America, so she decided to come to New York. For a certain series of reasons, she arrived to my office because she wanted to know what I thought about it. When I heard the full story and I had this girl in front of me, I thought only one thing. The only resource is the heart. So in order to help her decide what to do, I will appeal to her heart as a mother. So I followed Brad's advice, and I let her talk. Even if I knew already, I asked her about her story, how she came to New York. She said she was a feminist. She was a supporter of women's rights. So she had taken this decision and wanted to carry it through. And I said, well, me too. I do believe in women's rights. Often the women and girls are treated in an abusive way, but I'm a neonatologist, so I do believe in the rights of children as well. So we were in a room in the hospital, and there was a window, and the scene outside the window was the one you see on the slide, Manhattan at sunset. It was beautiful. And I said, well, look outside the window. Don't you think your baby has the right to look at this, or the right to meet his mom or his family? And well, with all the questions I asked her, she was quite a simple girl. She answered by saying yes, but then she stopped and said, well, this yes has a different meaning. So she remained silent, and I told her, come with me, let's go and have a look at the babies. So we went through the intensive care unit of my hospital. We have over 70 babies. Most of them were as big as the baby she was carrying at the moment. So we started talking, oh, that could be your baby. Is it a baby girl or a baby boy? And then she started asking questions. Why is this baby here? Who are his parents? When he's going to go home? So, well, at the end of this afternoon we spent together, she hugged me and said, I wanted to tell you that I'm going to keep my baby. I wanted to see my baby born. So that's when I understood that her mother's heart won. And I didn't have to tell her, you have to do this, you have to do that. I simply reawakened her heart, her true heart. So she went back to Latin America, and she said she would give birth to her baby, and she would send pictures to me. So this story was to introduce another question for Brad. What's your experience of the heart as a resource in your profession?
Well, another great question. And I want to bring forward something we've talked about. We always talk about. We doctors always talk about, well, how can we get better at treating our patients? And if you put this question in that context, you could say, how can we use the heart of the patient as a resource? That's like in your story. She appealed to the mother's heart, and there was a change of mind and a change in direction. But we've also, Elvira and I talk a lot, so we've also talked about the heart of the doctor as a resource. And I think I want to start with that, and then we'll see where we go. Most of the training, 90% or more of the training that a doctor receives is deposited from the eyebrows up. There is very little attention to what you might call training of the heart. Very, very little. In fact, I was hoping when I came to Italy that I would find that it was different from the United States, where my training was 40 years ago. And over there, where I come from, it's still true that students come in to medical school with very high ideals. Many students, if you talk to them, and we were talking with students here yesterday, will say things like, well, I want to be a doctor and a healer, and they'll just say it. You don't have to prompt them. They're already feeling it, and that's what drew them to medicine as a profession. Then there's research on this. American medical training tends to train that idealism and that awareness of the heart and the feelings, train it out of the doctor, so that by the time you get to the end of your 4, 5, 6 years of medical school, your 3 years of residency, a year or two of fellowship, you are the best technician on the planet, and you probably forgot about your heart 5 years before. Very common. And I thought, well, okay, I'll come to Italia. I'm sure I'll find that a country that is so oriented toward, organized around beauty, because that I've never been to Italy before. This is Barbara's and my first visit, and the first thing that impresses me about Italy is that it's almost like the purpose of living in Italy is to bring the beauty out of people and situations. The I'm digressing. I'm taking a sidetrack here, but I just have to say this. You notice immediately when you come to Italy and you've never been here before, how beautiful the children are. The children are, every child here is so gorgeous and so beautiful. And then you look and you notice, well, you know, if they follow the track of their parents, they're going to get even more beautiful as they grow up. Beauty here is an institution. It's a central organizing principle of life in Italy. When I hear from now on, when I hear La Dolce Vita, I'll know what that means in terms of beauty infusing life. That's what I think Italia. That's a lot of what it's about. So I thought I would come here and find that in medical training in Italy, that would hold true. That the heart in medical training in Italy would be much more important than it is in America. And so one of the medical students said yesterday the very same thing I just said. She said, we come here with our hearts open and high ideals, and as we go through training, it gets oppressed, compressed, shoved out. So even here, that happens. So that's why I think it's important to bring in the question of what about the heart of the physician, the heart of the doctor. It's very easy to talk about the heart of the person. I could appeal to all of your hearts in all your own personal situations and we could talk about that, but cracking the shell around the heart of the physician is what would be a wonderful thing around the world. So let me tell another story. This is another patient that I met when I was an intern. You go through medical school, and then your first year of residency is called internship. So I was just barely a doctor. I walked into the room and met a patient that was to be my patient, and his name was Bob. His diagnosis, his problem was leukemia. Very, very serious, almost always fatal disease of the bone marrow and blood. And Bob had a terrible case. He had chemotherapy once, left the hospital, and relapsed. His leukemia came back in 3 or 4 weeks. So he was back in the hospital for his second reinduction, we call it. And chemotherapy for leukemia is very difficult to endure. It's the drugs are so strong because the purpose of treatment, the cancer is in the bone marrow where the blood cells are made. So the purpose of the chemotherapy is to kill everything inside the bone marrow, and then you just hope and pray that the good blood cells come back before the leukemia cells come back. You just have to hope. It's like roll of the dice. So Bob was ready for chemotherapy, and I met him for the first time, and I looked over on the wall, and his jacket was hanging there, and across the back of the jacket was made of black leather. It was very dirty. And across the back it said, Hell's Angels. Bob was a motorcycle guy. He was a member of the Hell's Angels, which was a very notorious and difficult motorcycle gang in the area where I was learning medicine. So I was a little scared of him. Most of his teeth were missing. He was not the kind of person that I was used to knowing. So as I got to know him, beside his bed sat his girlfriend, and her name was Kay. Kay had frizzy afro hair out to about here, bright red hair. And she was very pretty. And she was very devoted to Bob. So as time went on, Bob got sicker by the day. And so Kay pulled me aside one day and said, I know Bob is going to die, so I would like to marry him. I would like to get married here. So we brought in the priest and had a wedding ceremony by the bed. Bob was too weak to get up, so we had the wedding right there. It was very happy. All his friends came to celebrate with him. They were all about this big with chains hanging off their jackets and, you know, a very rough group. But we all got along very well. So I was trying to get used to Bob and get to know him, and it was difficult for me because he was just so different. So one day I walk into his room, and he's reading a magazine, and it's a biker magazine with a big shiny motorcycle on the cover, the biggest motorcycle magazine in the United States, and he was reading it. So he says, "Hey, Doc, come over here." So I came over, and I sat down on the bed with him. By that time, we had become friends. And he had the magazine open to the centerfold. And it was a 2-page photograph, beautiful photograph of a gorgeous, shiny motorcycle with decals, beautiful paint, handlebars up here, totally shiny. And over the motorcycle was draped this beautiful woman with no clothes on at all. She had her hands up over the handlebars, and she was gorgeous, beautiful makeup, but no clothes. And then I noticed she had a big red hair like this. It was Kay, his wife, and it was Bob's motorcycle. This big national motorcycle magazine had heard about Bob's case, and they had put his motorcycle and his wife in the center of the magazine. And this was the biggest thing that had ever happened to Bob in his entire life. And he was just celebrating. He could barely raise his arms up off the bed, but he was so happy. So he looked at me and said, "Isn't she beautiful?" And I had no idea if he meant his wife or the motorcycle or the situation or what. And I decided it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The important thing is that Bob is that far away from dying, and he's having a day of celebration. He's genuinely happy. And I realized, here I'm thinking of Bob as my patient who's going to die. There's nothing much I can do. I had that useless feeling that this medical student, we all have that feeling. And I realized, wait a minute, the heart of the situation is Bob's joy. That's what's important. It's not Bob's leukemia that's important. It's not Bob's dying that's important. What's important is Bob and his heart. And then I noticed that even though I had been very worried about Bob and very sad for him and Kay, and it was a very bittersweet time, I noticed in my own heart was just overflowing with joy. And so the lesson to me there is I have to pay as much attention to my own heart as I pay to the healing and the opening of the heart of my patients. I have to watch for those moments when my own heart opens and my own healing happens. That day I was healed of much of my fear of leukemia. Never again did I see a leukemia patient and feel the same as I had felt before. It transformed my own heart and my own feelings. So I guess the moral of the story is that the basis, the foundation of healing is the heart. It's through the heart that we find ourselves, and that we're truly in community or in communion together, and that's where healing happens.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brad. This last example you mentioned, I didn't know, and what you've just said leads us back to the fact that we want everything for our patient. But what does this everything mean? That's joy, basically, fulfillment. And to this extent, I would like to go back to the experience of Rossella, the little girl I was talking about before, who actually asked the question, how could we make her mother content and satisfied so that her child could get everything. Following Brad's advice, actually, we can understand that we don't know what is going to happen, but we have to follow somebody else's. So I always tell the parents of my children, let's follow your child, and we will certainly meet something very beautiful. And with little Rossella, we knew that her life would have been short, but we didn't know how short. So we decided to be with her for her life, for the rest of her life, knowing that she could enjoy the love of her family and also our love, and that we could enjoy Rossella. And her life went on day by day up to the moment when her heart stopped beating. And her mother gave back her child to the one who had created her, but her existence was a joyful existence. She was loved by everybody. So I can truly say that in Rossella's life, that was an exceptional moment, very similar to what Brett was saying in his example. I would like to make a couple of examples more where I understand that any situation is exceptional, can become exceptional. Just have a look at these pictures. No one could imagine that there are siblings with a little sister that would have died a couple of hours later. You might wonder how important a baby is, a baby who lives only for 4 hours. Many would probably not agree with me showing this little baby to her siblings. But have a look, just have a look at these siblings. Here you see her brothers 8 years later. The picture was shot at the annual conference that I normally organize at my hospital to teach American doctors and nurses the comfort care, the concept of comfort care. I had invited their mother to talk about their story. When her children, 2 teenager young boys, knew that their mother was coming, they wanted to participate as well, to tell how important the presence of their little sister was in their growth as adolescents, and to talk about their family, their parents and the 2 young boys, who soon after the death of their little children set up an organization to support families in their own condition. So I can truly say that little Margherita here lived an exceptional life. She changed the lives of many other people. Another example. Here you see a small child. He lived slightly more than 1 hour, so 9 months in the belly, in the womb of his mother, and then an hour after being born. What we would like to underline here is one aspect: irrespective of the length of the life of a child, before death you have life, and we want to enjoy the life of a baby in full. And we even actually brought a cake with candles. And so I have one last very quick question for Bob. We have little time left. And the question concerns exactly this aspect. There's life before death. What kind of experience do you have of this in your work?
Well, there's life before death. There's life up until the moment of death, and beyond that, I'm not wise enough to know what happens after that. But I think our responsibility is to provide the best opportunity for the people we serve to live the best life they can, the way they want to live it, and until as long as they possibly can, until their last moment of life, if that's possible. I think we can do so much more as physicians and as the in the practice of medicine and in healthcare to actually make that happen. Elvira has encouraged me to talk about the work we're doing in the United States. Many years ago, I stopped seeing patients one-to-one and began to work through hospice and palliative care to work with more people than just facci. Now I work with an organization in Washington, D.C. To transform the way care is actually delivered in health systems to people who are very ill. And we're beginning to have great success now in bringing care to people where they live so that they don't have to come to see us in our offices or clinics or in the hospital. We can bring teams of people to support them wherever they live, and some of them have no homes. We have lots of homeless people in America, people who live in their cars, in hotels, nursing homes. We bring care to wherever they are. We meet them heart to heart. We train our teams to do that. We find out what their goals are, and we organize their health care to match their own personal goals. And we've had tremendous success, not only improving the quality of the care they get, but we've also reduced the cost of their care because it's very simple. If they don't have to go back to the hospital, they don't want to. The hospital is the most expensive place to provide care. So we have many patients that we care for at home so that they can live the life that they want until their last breath and never go back to the hospital again. That could be one way that we provide the care of the future in the United States and in other places as well. So once again, it's been such a privilege to be here. We love being with you, and I'm just so grateful to Elvira. I've never seen you in a white coat before with 5 pens in your pocket. You look so professional. But I just want to encourage all of us to find healing together and to live as well as we can until the last moment that we can.
Let me spend a couple of words to end this session. Also, to comment on what Brad has just told us, I would like to talk about this painting. This is an embroidery done by a mother and hung on the cradle of her child. And the writing is, "You are loved." This mother didn't write, "I love you," but she wrote, "You are loved." Because this mother understood that all the love she had in herself was not enough to save the life of her child. She realized that there was someone else who could finalize the exceptional and have the exceptional happen. Based on my experience and based on Brad's experience, it is exactly about this. This is what that child, that mother needs. And also we as medical professionals, we need someone who always loves us endlessly. So I would like to leave you with this message. Even if you are not doctors, the question of life, the issue of life is the very same for you as well. And before leaving, I would just like to remind you of the fact that the Rimini meeting needs to be supported by any one of us. So there is a fundraising campaign. There are lots of points here in the fair where you can do fundraising. Or you can also go to the website of the Rimini meeting. With the donation, you will receive the card of